Failure isn't the end. It's the moment life finally begins to get honest. The fall doesn't break you, it breaks what was fake in you. When you lose control, you find freedom. We spend most of our lives trying to build an image of who we think we should be. We wear masks to fit into a world that constantly measures us by results, achievements, and appearances. From a young age, we are told to avoid failure at all costs. We learn to equate success with safety and failure with shame. We begin to live not for ourselves, but for the expectations that others place upon us. We craft versions of ourselves that look perfect from the outside, but deep down something always feels off. Because beneath the perfection lies fear, the fear of not being enough, of being seen as weak, of being exposed. But failure has a strange way of stripping all of that away. It does not ask for permission. It simply arrives, tearing down the walls we built around our insecurities. And when it does, it reveals something we could never see while hiding behind success, the truth of who we really are. When everything goes wrong, when the plan falls apart, when the mask shatters, we finally meet ourselves without filters. Failure doesn't humiliate us, it allows filters. Failure doesn't humiliate us, it allows filters. It takes away the illusions we've mistaken for identity. It removes the noise and leaves us with silence, the kind of silence that demands reflection. In that stillness, we start to see the difference between what we wanted and what we truly needed. The job we thought defined us, the relationship we thought validated us, the dream that turned into an obsession. Failure wipes them clean, allowing us to begin again with clarity. Because failure doesn't destroy us, it exposes the false layers that never belonged to us in the first place. Most people try to avoid this confrontation. They chase success after success, afraid that slowing down might make them face what's behind the mask. But those who have failed deeply know something others don't. That losing what's fake is the first step toward finding what's real. Failure forces us to let go of borrowed dreams and inherited definitions of success. It confronts us with the uncomfortable question, who am I without my achievements? The answer to that question isn't found in victory, but in vulnerability. When we lose the illusion of perfection, we find authenticity. We start to live in alignment with our values instead of our fears. We stop pretending to have it all together and start focusing on what truly gives our life meaning. There's a story of an artist who once lost everything in a fire. Years of painting, sketches, unfinished ideas, all gone overnight. For months, he didn't touch a brush. He felt defeated, stripped of everything that gave him purpose. But eventually he realized something profound. All that work had been his mask. He had been painting not for himself, but for recognition. The fire had taken away his illusions, and with it, his dependence on validation. When he finally began again, his art changed. It was raw, imperfect, and deeply human. People didn't just see his paintings, they felt them. Failure had freed him from the need to impress. It allowed him to create from truth instead of fear. This is what failure does. It brings us back to our essence. When we fail, the voices of others quiet down. The opinions, the judgments, the comparisons, they all fade into the background. What remains is the quiet whisper of intuition, the inner compass that always knew the way but was drowned out by the noise of ambition. We start to remember why we began in the first place. Failure reminds us that we were never meant to live according to someone else's standards. It invites us to rebuild not from the ashes of expectation, but from the foundation of authenticity. And while success often inflates the ego, failure refines the soul. It burns away arrogance, pride, and pretension, leaving behind humility, the kind that doesn't weaken us but strengthens us. It teaches us compassion, both for ourselves and for others. When we've fallen, we understand the pain of others who stumble. When we've lost, we learn to celebrate others who rise. The illusion of being better than anyone else fades, and we start to see humanity not as a competition, but as a connection. Failure gives us empathy, and empathy gives us depth. Every illusion we hold on to, the illusion of control, the illusion of perfection, the illusion of certainty, is like a chain that binds us. Failure breaks those chains one by one. It tells us that it's okay not to have all the answers, that it's okay to be seen as imperfect, that it's okay to fall apart. Because only when we fall apart can we rebuild something more real. Failure takes away the false sense of security. Success often gives us and replaces it with grounded confidence. We stop chasing approval and start pursuing growth. We no longer seek to appear successful. We aim to become fulfilled. And maybe that's the ultimate gift of failure. It liberates us from the pressure to perform. It reminds us that who we are is not defined by what we achieve, but by how we rise, how we learn, and how we stay true to ourselves when no one is watching. It strips away illusions so we can finally see the truth, that freedom isn't found in perfection, but in authenticity. We live in a world that glorifies control. We are taught that success comes to those who plan every step, predict every outcome, and never allow a single thing to go wrong. Control gives us a sense of safety, a comforting illusion that if we work hard enough, we can manage everything: our career, our relationships, our future, even how people perceive us. But control is fragile. It's built on the belief that the world will obey our expectations. And when life inevitably refuses to, the walls of certainty collapse. That's when failure steps in. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply reminds us that no matter how much we plan, we are never fully in control. Yet, in losing that control, something unexpected happens. We begin to feel free. Failure has a way of exposing the limits of our control. It takes the perfectly crafted image of our life and shakes it until the cracks show. It interrupts the script we've written and forces us to improvise. It tells us that not everything is meant to be mastered. When our plans fail, we're forced to face a truth we often ignore: that life isn't a system to be controlled, but an experience to be lived. It's in the chaos, the uncertainty, and the unexpected turns that we often discover who we truly are. Because when everything goes according to plan, we're operating from comfort. But when nothing does, we're operating from courage. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It means surrendering to the flow of life, without losing our sense of direction. It means trusting the process even when the outcome isn't what we expected. Most of us cling so tightly to control because we fear the unknown. We fear what will happen if we stop managing, planning, or predicting. But failure dismantles that fear by showing us that even when things fall apart, we can still move forward. We realize that control was never the source of our strength. Adaptability was. Think about a time when everything seemed certain. The job was stable, the relationship felt solid, the future seemed predictable. Then something shifted. Maybe a business collapsed, a friendship ended, or an opportunity vanished overnight. In those moments, panic sets in because the mind resists uncertainty. But slowly, as the dust settles, we begin to see a strange kind of beauty in the breakdown. When control disappears, so do expectations. And when expectations disappear, possibilities emerge. We start to notice doors that were invisible when we were fixated on just one. There's a quiet power that comes from surrender. It's not passive acceptance. It's active openness. It's the willingness to see failure, not as the end, but as redirection. When we stop trying to control every variable, we create space for creativity to enter. Many of history's greatest discoveries and innovations weren't born out of careful planning, but out of mistakes, detours, and failures. They came from people who were brave enough to let go of control long enough to see a new path. Letting go also means releasing the need to control how others see us. The fear of judgment often drives us to overplan, overthink, and overperform. We want to be seen as competent, successful, and unshakable. But when we fail publicly, that facade crumbles. We're forced to show our humanity. And strangely, that's what connects us most deeply with others. People don't resonate with perfection. They resonate with authenticity. Failure strips away the performance of control and replaces it with realness. It gives us permission to say, "I don't know, I made a mistake," or "I'm learning." Those words don't weaken us, they humanize us. Control is rooted in fear. It's our way of trying to protect ourselves from pain, rejection, or chaos. But the harder we try to control life, the more rigid we become. And rigidity breaks under pressure. Flexibility, on the other hand, bends and adapts. When we fail, we are forced to bend. We learn to pivot, to adjust, to accept that we can't always predict what comes next. That flexibility becomes freedom, because freedom is not the absence of responsibility, it's the presence of trust. It's trusting that even when things fall apart, they can fall into place in ways we couldn't have imagined. Failure teaches us that we don't need to control everything to live meaningfully. In fact, some of the most transformative experiences come from moments we never planned. The relationship that didn't work out might lead to deeper self-understanding. The job we lost might push us to pursue a passion we'd buried. The rejection we feared might redirect us towards something far better. When we loosen our grip on how things should be, we make room for how things can be. There's a story of a mountaineer who spent years training for a climb that was supposed to define his legacy. He planned every step, studied every map, calculated every risk, but halfway through, an unexpected storm forced him to abandon the summit. For weeks, he felt defeated, ashamed, angry at what he couldn't control. But later, while helping others stranded on the mountain, he realized something powerful. The goal had blinded him to the purpose. His purpose wasn't to conquer the mountain, it was to connect, to serve, to survive. Failure had freed him from the illusion of control and given him the gift of perspective. The moment we stop fighting life and start flowing with it, something inside us shifts. We begin to feel lighter. The anxiety that comes from needing to predict every outcome fades. We stop obsessing over what if and start embracing what if. We realize that our value isn't tied to our ability to control, but to our capacity to respond with grace. When things don't go as planned, that's where resilience grows. Not in the moments of mastery, but in the moments of surrender. Failure frees us because it dismantles the false security of control. It pushes us beyond the walls of certainty into the vast landscape of possibility. And while losing control feels terrifying at first, it's often the only way to discover how much strength, creativity, and wisdom we truly possess when we allow life to unfold rather than trying to force it. We grow up believing that success is a straight line, a path marked by achievements, milestones, and victories that lead us to happiness and fulfillment. From a young age, we are conditioned to think that success means having more, doing more, and never falling short. The world teaches us that to succeed is to win and to fail is to lose. But then failure happens, unexpectedly, sometimes brutally, and it begins to unravel everything we thought we knew. It challenges our definitions, questions our values, and forces us to look at success not as a destination but as a direction. Failure doesn't destroy success, it redefines it. It takes the rigid, external version of success we've been taught to chase and replaces it with something deeply personal and profoundly real. When we fail, the first thing that crumbles is our illusion of certainty. We begin to see that success is not as linear as we were led to believe. It's not a ladder you climb, but a landscape you explore, filled with detours, wrong turns, and hidden lessons. Failure forces us to pause and ask, what does success really mean to me? That question alone is powerful, because it shifts our focus from society's expectations to our own truth. Maybe success isn't about being admired. Maybe it's about being authentic. Maybe it isn't about proving something. Maybe it's about growing into someone. Failure takes away the borrowed definitions of success and replaces them with our own. In success, we often seek validation. In failure, we find meaning. When things fall apart, we start to realize that the pursuit of external success, the job title, the income, the reputation, often leaves us empty if it isn't connected to purpose. Failure redirects our energy inward. It asks us to stop chasing and start reflecting. It makes us question whether the path we were on was truly ours, or just one we thought we were supposed to follow. In that reflection, something shifts. Success stops being about comparison and starts being about alignment. Aligning with our values, our purpose, and our inner truth. There's a story about a woman who spent her life climbing the corporate ladder. Every promotion felt like progress, every raise like validation. But one day, a merger wiped out her position overnight. She felt devastated, betrayed, and lost. But as months passed, she began to ask herself a question she'd never dared to before. Did I even love what I was doing? The honest answer was no. Failure didn't ruin her life. It revealed it. It showed her that success wasn't in the title she held, but in the fulfillment she felt. She started her own company, built around passion instead of pressure. That's what failure does. It interrupts the wrong story so we can start writing the right one. When success comes easily, we often mistake comfort for growth. But failure breaks that illusion. It humbles us enough to learn again, to listen again, to grow again. We begin to see that success isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about mastering the lessons they teach. Every failure we encounter reshapes our understanding of what matters. We stop measuring success by how fast we get somewhere and start measuring it by how deeply we learn along the way. The most successful people aren't the ones who never failed. They're the ones who learned how to use failure as a compass, not a verdict. Failure also strips away the ego attached to success. It reminds us that success without humility is hollow. When we succeed repeatedly, we can start to believe we're in control of everything, that we've mastered life. But failure brings us back to reality. It shows us that success isn't something we possess. It's something we participate in. It teaches us gratitude for the wins and grace for the losses. It grounds us in perspective. We realize that success isn't a status to defend, but a process to experience. It's fluid, changing as we do. What once mattered deeply may lose its importance, and what we once ignored may become everything. Failure teaches us to adapt our definition of success as we evolve. The irony is that failure often reveals success more clearly than success itself. Success can be deceiving. It can make us feel accomplished even when we're misaligned. But failure is honest. It doesn't flatter, it exposes. It tells us this isn't working, or this isn't you, and as painful as that is, it's one of the most valuable truths we can receive. Through that honesty, we refine our goals, redefine our values, and rediscover our direction. Failure acts like a mirror, reflecting not who we pretend to be, but who we are becoming. When we start to see failure as a teacher, the way we approach success transforms. We stop chasing perfection and start pursuing progress. We no longer see success as a finish line, but as a reflection of ongoing growth. Success becomes less about outcomes and more about integrity. Doing what feels right, not just what looks right. It becomes less about applause and more about authenticity. We realize that we can fail in the eyes of others and still succeed in the truth of our own journey. The most beautiful part of failure's gift is that it deepens our gratitude for success when it finally comes. When you've tasted loss, achievement feels richer. When you've faced rejection, acceptance feels sacred. When you've endured doubt, confidence feels earned. Failure makes success more meaningful because it gives it context. It makes every small victory feel like a triumph, not because of the result, but because of the resilience it represents. Success, after failure, stops being about proving something to the world and starts being about fulfilling something within yourself. So many people chase success with fear of losing, fear of failing, fear of being judged. But when you've already failed and survived, that fear loses power. You start chasing success, not because you need it, but because you want to create something meaningful. You no longer define yourself by wins or losses, but by the courage to keep trying. Failure gives you freedom from the need to prove and replaces it with the desire to grow. It teaches you that success is not the opposite of failure, it's the result of learning from it. Failure redefines success by shifting our focus from external validation to internal evolution. It shows us that success isn't measured by how high we climb, but by how authentically we rise. It's not found in being perfect, but in being persistent. Every time we fail, we refine what success truly means, and each time it becomes less about what we have and more about who we become in the process. There is a quiet kind of strength that can't be taught in classrooms or built through success. It's the strength that comes from falling apart and putting yourself back together, from losing what you thought you needed and still finding a way to stand. That strength is called emotional resilience. It's not about being unshakable or immune to pain. It's about being able to face it, to feel it, and to rise in spite of it. Failure, more than anything else, is the forge where this resilience is created. When we fail, we don't just confront the world's obstacles, we confront our own emotional limits. We meet our fears, our insecurities, and our doubts in their rawest form. And in meeting them, we begin to grow stronger, not in the absence of weakness, but because of it. Failure doesn't just test what we can do, it tests who we are when everything is stripped away. When a dream falls apart, when a plan collapses, when effort doesn't lead to results, it feels like the ground has been pulled out from under us. The mind spirals with questions. Why me? What did I do wrong? Am I not good enough? These moments can feel unbearable because they challenge our sense of identity. But what we don't realize is that emotional resilience begins exactly there, in that fragile space between falling and standing again. The discomfort we try so hard to avoid is actually the soil where growth takes root. When we experience failure, our emotions go through chaos. There's shame, disappointment, fear, sometimes even anger. It's tempting to numb those feelings or distract ourselves from them. But every time we resist the urge to escape and instead allow ourselves to feel fully, we build endurance. Just like physical muscles grow through tension and release, Emotional strength grows through confrontation and recovery. We start to understand that pain doesn't destroy us, avoidance does. By moving through failure instead of running from it, we learn that emotions, no matter how heavy, always pass. This realization changes everything. We stop fearing feelings and start using them as guides. The people who seem unbreakable aren't those who never fail. They're the ones who failed often enough to know that no failure is final. They've learned to rebuild after every collapse. They've faced disappointment enough times to know it's temporary. Each time they fall and rise again, they develop a deeper sense of calm. Not because life gets easier, but because they've learned they can survive it. This calm becomes a foundation. It's what allows them to take risks, to dream bigger, and to lead others through uncertainty. Emotional resilience isn't loud or visible. It's the steady pulse of courage that keeps beating even when everything else feels lost.
Imagine someone who loses their business. After years of hard work, in the beginning the loss feels unbearable. Sleepless nights, self-doubt, and endless questioning fill their mind. But slowly as they start over, something shifts. They begin to realize that what they lost wasn't just money, it was the illusion of invincibility. Failure humbled them, but it also sharpened them. They become more aware of what truly matters. Not the applause, not the image of success, but the ability to endure, to adapt, to keep moving. By the time they rebuild, they're not the same person they were before. They're grounded, measured, and emotionally stable. That transformation didn't come from success. It came from failure's crucible. Emotional resilience also brings a kind of wisdom that can't be gained through winning alone. When you've failed, you learn empathy. You understand the struggles others face. Because you felt your own, you stop judging people for where they've stumbled and start admiring them for how they've risen. Failure softens the edges of the ego. It replaces arrogance with humility, impatience with perspective, and pride with understanding. And as we develop this emotional depth, we become not only stronger for ourselves but also safer for others. People trust those who have failed because they carry compassion, the kind that can only come from knowing pain firsthand.
One of the most powerful lessons failure teaches is emotional regulation. It's easy to stay calm when everything's going well, but real composure is tested when nothing is. When we fail, our emotions pull us in every direction. We feel anger towards circumstances, frustration toward ourselves, and sometimes envy toward those who seem to be succeeding effortlessly. But over time, failure trains us to navigate these emotional storms. We learn that reacting impulsively doesn't change outcomes, that patience brings clarity, and that every challenge contains a lesson hidden beneath discomfort. This kind of control isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about understanding them so deeply that they no longer control us. Failure also dismantles the illusion of perfection. We stop expecting life to move in a straight line. We stop expecting life to move in a straight line. We stop expecting ourselves to always get it right. This acceptance removes unnecessary emotional pressure. Instead of being paralyzed by fear of making mistakes, we become willing to try, to experiment, to fail again. This openness is the very essence of resilience, the ability to stay emotionally flexible, to adapt, and to continue even after being knocked down. When you stop fearing failure, you stop fearing growth. So think of the emotional transformation of someone who faces rejection. Over and over, an actor who's been told no 100 times, a writer whose manuscripts were constantly declined, a student who didn't make it on the first attempt. Each no hurts, but over time the pain begins to lose its sting. They learn to separate their worth from their results. They develop patience, persistence, and faith in the long process. That's emotional resilience, the strength to stay steady when the world keeps saying not yet. And perhaps the most profound part of it is that emotional resilience doesn't just prepare us for future failures, it enhances our capacity for joy. When you've been through darkness, light feels brighter. When you've lost and rebuilt, gratitude runs deeper. When you've cried and healed, happiness stops feeling like luck and starts feeling like a gift. The emotions we experience after failure are not just about endurance, they're about expansion. They deepen our ability to feel life fully. The sorrow, the hope, the struggle, and the triumph. Failure then becomes less of a wound and more of a workout for the soul. Each setback stretches our emotional boundaries, strengthens our recovery muscles, and shapes us into someone who can handle more of life's unpredictability without breaking. Because emotional resilience isn't about avoiding storms, it's about learning to dance in the rain, knowing that no matter how fierce the storm becomes, we will always find our balance again. Confidence is often misunderstood. We tend to associate it with success, with winning, with people who seem to have everything figured out. We believe confidence is the reward for those who never falter, the natural posture of those who never fall. But true confidence doesn't come from constant victory. It comes from surviving defeat. It's not born in moments of applause, but in the quiet aftermath of failure. The kind of confidence that lasts, that runs deep and remains unshaken by circumstance, is built not when everything goes right, but when everything goes wrong and we still choose to stand. Failure has a way of revealing what confidence really means. When we fail, we lose the external markers of validation. The praise, the recognition, the approval, the spotlight turns off, and we are left alone with ourselves. In that silence, the question arises, without success, who am I? It's an uncomfortable question, but it's the one that builds authentic confidence. Because the answer doesn't come from the outside, it comes from within. When the applause fades and we still find worth in ourselves, that's when confidence stops being conditional and starts becoming real. Most people chase confidence the same way they chase perfection. They think it's something you earn through flawless performance. But confidence that depends on never failing is fragile. The first setback cracks it. The first rejection shatters it. Real confidence isn't about pretending to be fearless. It's about knowing you can survive fear. Failure gives us that knowledge. Every time we stumble and recover, every time we lose and try again, we prove something powerful to ourselves, that we can endure. Confidence built through failure doesn't boast, it breathes. It's quiet, grounded, and self-assured in a way that can't be faked. Think of a child learning to walk. They don't question their ability to stand. They simply fall and try again. Every fall strengthens their legs. Every attempt builds coordination. Failure isn't a signal to stop. It's a part of the process. Somewhere along the way, as adults, we forget this. We start seeing failure as proof of inadequacy, instead of a necessary step toward mastery. But when we reframe failure as feedback, we reclaim that childlike confidence, the kind that isn't dependent on outcome but on effort. It's the realization that falling isn't failure, it's practice for strength. Authentic confidence is built through experience, and failure gives us that experience faster than success ever could. Success can make us comfortable, but comfort rarely teaches. Failure forces reflection. It demands adaptation. It makes us dissect what went wrong and challenges us to grow from it. Through that process, we begin to understand our abilities on a deeper level. We learn where we're strong, where we need help, where we can stretch further. Each failure becomes a data point in self-awareness, and self-awareness is the root of confidence. When you truly know yourself, your limits, your fears, your resilience, no external force can easily shake you. There's a distinct difference between confidence built on image and confidence built on experience. The first is loud. The second is quiet. The first needs to be seen. The second simply is failure strips away the need to perform confidence. When you've fallen enough times, you stop pretending. You stop needing to convince others that you're capable because you've already convinced yourself through experience. You've seen yourself break and rebuild. You've faced doubt and kept going. You've failed publicly and survived privately. That kind of confidence doesn't announce itself, it radiates naturally. Failure also removes the illusion of comparison. When you fail, the facade of competition dissolves. You start realizing that no one is watching as closely as you think. Everyone is fighting their own battles, hiding their own fears, learning their own lesson. Confidence begins to grow when we stop measuring our worth against others and start measuring it against our own progress. Failure redirects our focus inward. It teaches us to compete, not with people but with our past selves. And that shift transforms insecurity into motivation. One of the most liberating aspects of failure is that it kills the fear of embarrassment. Once you've been rejected, criticized, or misunderstood, and you survive, you stop caring so much about external judgment. You stop seeking constant approval and start trusting your own voice. Confidence rooted in authenticity doesn't crave validation. It creates it. You no longer need others to tell you that you're capable because you've already proven it to yourself in silence.
through the resilience that failure demanded.
Consider an athlete who loses a major championship after years of preparation. In that moment, it feels like the world has ended. But when the dust settles, they go back to training, not because someone told them to, but because they still believe they can improve. They face their weaknesses head-on, rebuild their strategy, and return stronger. That process, confronting failure and continuing anyway, builds a form of confidence that no trophy can replicate. It's confidence grounded in effort, not outcome. It's the kind that says, even if I lose again, I know I can handle it. That belief is unshakable because it's been tested. Failure also humbles us in the best possible way. It reminds us that confidence doesn't mean thinking we're invincible, it means knowing we're adaptable. When we stop trying to appear perfect, we make room for honesty. We can say, I don't know yet, or I made a mistake, without it threatening our self-worth. That level of honesty is rare, but it's magnetic. People trust those who can admit flaws because it signals security. The paradox of failure is that the more we embrace our imperfections, the more confident we become. And the most profound transformation failure brings is self-trust. Confidence is not just the belief that we can succeed, it's the trust that we can survive failure and still move forward. Each setback, each rejection, each disappointment becomes evidence that we can endure. We stop fearing the fall because we've learned how to get up. We stop doubting our worth because we've proven it in moments when no one else believed in us. This quiet, unshakable trust in ourselves is what true confidence feels like, not arrogance, not bravado, but peace. Failure unlocks the door to this kind of confidence because it strips away everything superficial. It takes away the show, the image, the illusion, leaving behind only what's real. And what's real is the simple, powerful truth that we don't become confident by always winning. We become confident by learning that losing doesn't define us. Through failure, we stop pretending to be strong and start realizing that we already are failure. When stripped of fear and stigma, it reveals itself not as a punishment, but as a profound teacher. It dismantles illusions, loosens our grip on control, strengthens our emotional core, and gives birth to a kind of confidence that no success alone can build. Through every setback, we are reshaped, refined into individuals who see beyond appearances and measure growth, not by outcomes, but by endurance. Failure frees us from the pressure to be perfect and instead invites us to be authentic. It reminds us that falling is not the opposite of rising. It is part of it. Every fall peels away the layers of pride, fear, and pretense until only truth remains. The truth that freedom is found not in avoiding failure, but in embracing it as the path that leads us back to ourselves.